New Woman in George Bernard Shaw plays. George Bernard Shaw was a dramatist with a purpose. His purpose was to make the world a better place as it was. As he considered that it was the duty of all men to strive to leave the world a better place than they found it. That is why he made people think afresh about human situations and problems, so that what was found obsolete might be rejected, what needed change might be modified, and what was found still valid might be retained. That is why he made up his mind to do in English what Isben had been doing in Norwegian, namely to write plays discussing public affairs which touched the lives of very large number of people. He took up the current social, political and religious problems as subject for his plays. He dealt with the problem of prostitution in Mrs. Warren's profession, war and marriage in Arms and the Man, the problem of democracy in Bullock Cart, and the problem of new women in Candida. From time immemorial, women have been content with a subordinate place in the home and in society. But towards the end of the 19th century, women started expressing their discontent with an inferior status and started agitating for equality with men. This is known as the woman question. Any woman who clamored for her right to have an independent place in the community is called a new woman. George Bernard Shaw was among the limited number of men who supported the principle of equality of the sexes. That is why most of his heroines have the characteristics of the new woman. They are independent in spirit, self-confident, clear-headed, morally courageous, and emotionally well-controlled. Candida is one of those women. The main story or situation in Candida is one that has been treated in scores of plays before and after George Bernard Shaw. It is often called the Eternal Triangle, a three-sided affair in which two men are in love with the same woman. In the customary treatment of this, there the woman gets secretly involved with the second man. The husband at length discovers it. Then the erring wife either repents for it or is cast off by her husband and left to continue the illicit relationship. But in Candida, George Bernard Shaw turns the eternal triangle upside down by making the woman morally stronger enough to sustain the two men instead of being upheld by them. Candida neither repents nor is she cast off by her husband. On the contrary, both the men are apologetic to her. Instead of accepting the old theatrical role of a woman who allows herself to be quarreled over by two men and passively despised of to either the one or the other, Candida takes the situation under her own control, brings their dispute to an immediate end, and imposes her own will upon both men. Candida emerges not only as a faithful wife, but also as the strongest character in the play. She often calls them boy and treats them as a boy, as if She were superior to them in all respects. Of course, her husband appears strong in the play, as he always projects himself as the philosopher, friend, and guide to the people. Even then, Candida is not overpowered by him. She often gives him jerk and makes him realize his weakness as a husband. As a wife, she is always conscious of her right. She says, I hardly have one evening a week with you. I must be talked to. Here is a woman who is not dependent on the will of her husband. She is conscious of her right and asks for it. Candida makes him realize that he cannot satisfy anybody with the help of his sermons and phrases for long. She fearlessly condemns him as a thorough clergyman. She does not behave in the customary way of an obedient wife. She considers herself equal to moral and points out his shortcomings as a moral and intellectual being. She talks with her husband on equal footing, and this is a salient trait of a new woman. Even Moral discovers her weakness, for when she is not disturbed, she behaves as a morally superior being. She is not hesitant to choose between Moral and Marchbanks. She says, I am up for auction. What do you bid, James? In spite of being married, she re examines the question of her future relationship with them. This shows that she is not that type of woman who is overpowered by emotion and sentiment. She takes her decision on the basis of reason. Moral offers his strength for her defense and ability and industry for her livelihood, whereas Marchbanks offers his weakness and hurts need for her, but she is not taken in by their beautiful words and phrases, as she is a new woman. She discovers the truth and gives herself to the weaker of the two. Any other woman may have been deceived by their words and phrases. Her eyes could go beyond the literal meaning of the words to the depth of reality. She perceives weakness in a strength and a strength in weakness. She perceived that her physically robust husband is really weaker than Marchbanks. She tells Marchbanks that moral strength is in her and it would be non existent without womanly care and devotion. But Marchbanks has been self dependent from his tender years and can live quite well without the ministrations of Candida. So, Candida is the heart's need of moral. That is why she keeps herself to the needy one like a new woman. Here she is being guided by reason and not by emotion. But Candida is not lost in her emotion and sentiment. Women are generally swept by the current of emotion. Candida selects Mr. Morel once again as her life partner and consoles Marchbanks by asking him to compose a poem on her two sentences. As yet, man has been finding out a woman for his wife in our society. Women have not been given right to select their life partner. It is for the first time in English drama that George Bernard Shaw has allowed Candida to select her life partner. In this respect, he has made her appear as the mouthpiece of new woman. George Bernard Shaw feels that man and woman form the two wheels of the chariot of society. The chariot cannot move if one wheel is weak. That is why he wants to give equal opportunity to both man and woman for selecting their life partner. then only marriage can be helpful in crossing the ocean of life, as Bernard Shaw finds that most of the marriages are convenient but not delightful. Besides, he feels that each home constitutes the brick of the house of the world. If we want to make the world happy, we will have to make each home happy. Home's happiness constitutes the first step towards world happiness, but home's happiness is dependent upon a healthy relationship between a husband and a wife. For this purpose, we will have to lay healthy foundation to marriage. As yet, marriages have been based upon romantic considerations of life which have little value in practical life. He wants that marriage should be based upon real and practical considerations of life. Practical consideration demands that woman's feelings should not be ignored at the time of deciding the question of her life partner. Without taking the woman into confidence, we cannot have happy marriage. That is why Bernard Shaw supports the new woman and permits them to clamor for their right in his place.